best top 5 horror movies of all time, according to experts. Yeah? We're going to have a look at their 5. We're going to have a look at my 5 because I don't agree with their 5. I think their 5 is no good. We're going to talk about their number 5 in a little bit more detail because I guarantee you've not seen it. And we're going to have a look who their experts are. So let's get on with it. But firstly, how did it come to be? How did they choose them? And here we go. We visited top 10 popular websites to see which horror films are rated the highest. Our list is ranked based on the most fright-inducing scary movies across those sites. Wow, we're going to have a look at those sites, the 10 sites, a little bit later. But let's have a look at the number 1, The Exorcist. I don't agree with this one. I'm not saying it's not a decent horror movie or scary or whatever. I just wouldn't put it in my top 5. If I'm doing a top 5 movies to watch for a scary night in, this ain't it. It's not on it. I'm sorry. Halloween 1978. Again, a little bit too predictable for me. Again, this is not on my list. It's not on my top 5 list of movies to watch if I'm having a horror night in. Paranormal Activity 2007. This isn't on my top 5 list of any reason for anything. For anything at all. I wouldn't even have this on my top 20 list. This was to me, it was 80 minutes of boring and 10 minutes of maybe something in the whole movie. So to me, it's not worthy of being on a list of top 5. Number 4, The Shining. Again, this to me is a little bit too predictable. I wouldn't have it in a top 5 list. I don't even think I'd have it in a top 10 list. I'm not saying it's not good or scary. What I'm saying is I wouldn't have it in a list. I think there are scarier horror movies out there than this list. Number 4, It Follows. This one is the most surprising thing going. Now, clearly this shows a disconnect between critics and the audience. Out of 10, I would be giving this maybe a 5. Maybe a 4.5 to 5 out of 10 for me. It came across as a student production. If you were in film school and you had 12 months to do something and submit it, and at the end of the year that was your assessment, that's what this is. I've seen scarier things on Dust on YouTube. I've seen scarier things on YouTube just by searching for horror movies, short horror story, stuff like that. Way scarier things than this. The critics seem to think this is some kind of unique thing. And when I saw this, I got puzzled and I went to the YouTube trailer on it, and comments are things like, and even on Rotten Tomatoes, oh, brilliant cinema score, great cinematography, great directing. And I'm like, I don't look at a horror movie. Like, I would never go to say, watch The Shining and walk out thinking, geez, that had great music. Like, it's not a thought on the top of my mind. I go to a horror movie, I want to walk out and go, oh, far out, that scared the bejesus out of me. That's what I want to see. But the comments just seemed a little bit too convoluted to me. Almost like rent a positive comment. That's what I felt. Okay, if you haven't seen the movie, it's really simple. Something, let's call it some form of entity or whatever, is going to get you. But you can stop it. It's like a game of tag. If you're it, it's going to come after you. But you can tag someone else. Then it will come after them. Well, they can tag someone else. Well, then it will come after who they tag. But if it gets you, it will kill you. Then the tag will revert back to the person that it got passed from. Yeah? So if John gives it to Jenny, and Jenny gives it to Steve, and Steve gives it to Betty, well, if it kills Betty, it'll now come after Steve. And if it gets Steve, it'll go after Jenny. If it gets Jenny, it'll go back to John. So how do you tag the next person? You have sex with them. Yep. It's a sexually transmitted whatever. It's a STD. It's a victim tag. But So I suppose in a sense that's kind of like a little bit of a novel idea. But some of the comments were talking about how uniquely novel it was that this creature could shapeshift and be different things. Or you never knew what its real form was because it always looked like a person or something. And I thought to myself, well, it's not rather unique at all. In 1934, Stanley Weinbaum wrote a short story called Valley of Dreams, a sequel to The Martian Odyssey. And in that book, the valley was full of these plants that could make an illusion. They were meat-eating plants, and they created an illusion in your mind. So if you looked into the valley, you didn't see this valley of meat-eating plants. You might have seen lush green pasture. And as you walked into the valley, there might have been someone who you wanted to see. And the plant could pick up on it and manifest that person there. So you're looking at the plant, but you're not seeing the plant. You're seeing the person you miss the most or you trust the most or whatever. And then you'd walk up to them and say hello, and the plant would get you. Then in the TV series called The Night Stalker, Kolchak, in one of their episodes, the Hindu Rakshaka. Now, I'm not saying what I'm about to say is what a Hindu Rakshaka does, but for the TV show, they said it did this. So you can look up a Hindu Rakshaka as an actual real thing. So they said it was a monster that could give the illusion in your brain of someone you trusted, wanted to see. So if you were a woman walking late at night and you heard some scary noises and you saw a security guard or a police officer, you'd be relieved. But it's actually the monster making you see the security guard or the policeman or the police officer. So once you got near it, it'll get you. So that was 1974. Other cultures have them. There's one in Japan, I forget the name of the one in Japan, but does the same thing. In Poland, there's the Zmora, which can change into like a length of straw to get through a keyhole. But I think it's more fitting of the Bieda in Polish, which is a monster that can take any form, human, animal, or an object. So you wouldn't even know. It could take the form of an animal to come into your house and then become an object. So you wouldn't even know this thing that wants to get you has come on in. So lots of folk history and folklore around the world have shape-shifting entities that can do harm. So that's not a unique idea at all. But like I said, the movie, it looked like a student production to me. Okay, so who did they see? Elle, Time Out, Harper's Bazaar, Vulture, Esquire, The Wrap, Rolling Stone, Teen Vogue, Rotten Tomatoes and Empire. I don't know about you, but I don't go to Harper's Bazaar or Vogue to get my horror movie recommendations. That's just me. I definitely don't go there. So what are my top 5? If I'm having a horror movie night in and I'm going to watch 5 movies, what 5 are they going to be? Well, number 5, and I'll go 5 to 1. Number 5 on my list is The Return of the Living Dead from 1985, I believe. That, I'm not going to spoil it too much, but they get themselves into a predicament where destroying a zombie will create more zombies, or living dead in this case. There's some humor in it and things like that, but otherwise, for a scary movie, it's good. Number 4 scary movie for a scary night in, Nightmare on Elm Street, the original one, not the ones that follow. They started to just become a joke of themselves, but the original Nightmare on Elm Street, I think, is worthy of a 5. Number 4 on my list of 5. Number 3 on the list is An American Werewolf in London. That's a great one. It's got chills in it. You know where you see something and you just go all cold and things like that. It's got those in it. It's got jump scares. It's got a little bit of horror and gore and just things like that. It's a brilliant movie. Number 2 on my list for scary things to watch on a night in is The Thing from 1982, starring Kurt Russell. It's brilliant. The creation of paranoia that John Carpenter gets within all the characters, the realism, and you're riding along with these people. It's got some jump scares, bit of gory stuff. It's got a little bit of something for everyone. you haven't seen it, go watch that one. Go watch that. Add it to your list. Now, my number one on the list, a co-worker said to me once about this movie, I wish I'd never seen it because it ruined me for all other horror movies. In other words, no other horror movie could compare to the feelings that they experienced while watching this movie. And the number one on my list is the 1980 The Evil Dead, starring Bruce Campbell. Now, not number 2 and 3, and it was like the thing became a parody of itself, and it was just a joke after the first one. But number 1, the one that started it all, that is true horror. It's got gore, horror, jump scares, just suspense. It has just everything in it. It's truly, I'm looking through my fingers, or I'm just gonna bury my head in a pillow or cushion on my lap. It's brilliant for a horror movie. Number 1 on my list. Now, I'll give some honorable mentions. Poltergeist, I think, is worthy. It's got a few jump scares that might not kind of fit up there. Things like 28 Days Later, I think, is decent. The original number 1, Resident Evil, I don't think I'd bother with the ones after, but I think number 1 is pretty good for a little bit of a horror sort of a thing. And I will also mention, I'm not sure if you'd call it a suspense thriller, psychological thriller, horror, action, suspense, like whatever, but it's the movie The Hitcher with Rutger Hauer in it from 1980 something, 86, 87, 84, whatever year it is, it's mid-80s. The Hitcher. That one is absolute sheer brilliance. You are riding along with this character the whole time. You know what's going on. There's no surprises here in this one. You know everything. But just the sheer evil of Rutger, but the brilliance as well, and just so it's also worthy of an honourable mention. But anyway, my top 5 list for a good scary night in is The Return of the Living Dead, A Nightmare on Elm Street, American Werewolf in London, The Thing, and number 1 is Evil Dead. Now, if you agree with that, let me know what you think in the comments below, or tell me what your top 5 would be for a scary night in, and also leave that in the comments below.